And he gets back first in Cambridge, then in London, and then moves into kind of a rural village called Bellon outside of London, and begins this period of intense kind of speculation. At this point where he tries to say, okay, I want to make sense of these patterns. And it's here where he convinces himself finally in evolution. That's what's really, so he takes issues of, say, the Galapagos Islands. Well, what's going on here? Well, it could be that God just decided to create species on the Galapagos Island that are similar to those in the South American mainland. He may have just never gotten around to creating amphibians. You know, it's 7 days of creation, you don't have so much time, I suppose. But no, that Darwin, that doesn't seem to make sense. Doesn't make a lot more sense that you had species from South America find their way somehow to the Galapagos Islands and then begin to evolve into those species. That's the explanation. Why no amphibians? Well, you can see how reptiles or plants, certainly birds would get from South America to the Galapagos, but how do you get something like an amphibian? Well, amphibians, given their kind of biological nature, trying to cross that huge boundary of water simply wasn't so possible. So here you can see that the patterns how you can explain the patterns could be some evolutionary sort of change. This is the type of thing that Darwin really begins to kind of work through. He also is really wants to emphasize how you would explain these patterns in terms of natural law. Now, Newton got to explain the planets on the basis of natural law. Geologists got to explain the history of the Earth through the process of natural law. And actually, one of the things that if you are a historian of Darwin, you recognize that the guy had absolutely appalling handwriting. But what he's writing down here is quite interesting. He says we can allow satellites, planets, universes, indeed whole systems of universes, to be governed by law, but the smallest insects we wish to be created at once by a special act. Why not? If we can explain the origin of planets and geology and chemistry, all of these things by the operation of natural law, why can't we explain the origin of species by the operation of natural law rather than by a continuous series of ad hoc interventions by God? We don't expect God out there winding up Saturn around the sun. Why do we have to explain insects and that same thing? And so Darwin, during this period, he begins to think very hard about if there is evolution, what drives evolution? It's one thing to say that things evolve, it's another thing to say why do they evolve? And here, an encounter with the political economist Thomas Malthus is absolutely central. Malthus's argument at the end of the 18th century, kind of responding to the kind of political crisis of the French Revolution, so essentially argues that humans are all never can be. Human society is always going to be fairly miserable because humans are always going to have more children than the environment can sustain. And if you think about how, if you think about the patterns of reproduction, if I have 3 children, each of the children have 3 children, each of those children have 3, population will grow exponentially, but you don't have the environment to sustain that. And Malthus is talking about this in human terms. But Darwin is making quite the easy sort of leap to say, well, if you have these exponential growth in terms of human populations, you certainly clearly have it in animal and plant populations, which unlike humans don't have any opportunity to actually govern their sort of reproduction. And so in the Origin of Species, he explains, well, take the elephant. It's the slowest breeding of all animals that we know. That he says that it'll breed at 30 years old, and keep breeding for the next 60 years, and it'll have maybe 3 offspring. Elephants are not creatures that pump out a lot of offspring, is the point. And yet, based on this natural increase, if you take 1 pair of elephants, at the end of 500 years, you have 50 million elephants. So even this really slow breeding animal would outbreed this environment. It's So this is elephants. I mean, imagine, of course, rabbits or any other type of animal that breeds at a much, much higher rate. And so Darwin begins to think, well, if most elephants are born are not going to be able to survive, those who survive are going to be those that on average are better adapted to their environments. This becomes sort of natural selection. As he explains in The Origin, can it be thought improbable, seeing that variations useful to man have undoubtedly occurred, that other variations useful in some way to each being in the great and complex battle of life do sometimes occur in the course of thousands of generations? If such do occur, can we doubt? Remember that many more individuals were born than could possibly survive, that individuals having any advantage, longer neck, perhaps a little bit faster, sharper teeth, better teeth for a particular type of diet, any kind of advantage you can imagine, would they have the best chance of surviving and procreating their kind. On the other hand, we may feel sure that any variation in the least degree injurious would be rigidly destroyed. This preservation of favorable variations and the rejection of injurious variations I call natural selection. So you can see how these kind of attachment to these patterns kind of lead to this really kind of fun, what is the most important theory, perhaps in the history of science, certainly in the history of biology. And so it was in The Origin of Species, comes out in 1859, where he sets out sketches on it. I mean, he sees this actually more of an abstract of this theory. It's nearly 500 pages, but he sees this as kind of abstract. He sets out his theory. It deals with its various components, talks about the patterns, talks about geological patterns, describes artificial selection of humans, a whole range of different issues, talks about difficulties that he admits that his theory perhaps can't entirely explain. And it's also at the end of The Origin where I got today's title. So he's in the conclusion, so we've about 5 more pages to go, where he says something quite interesting. He says, when the views entertained in this volume on the origin of species, or when analogous views are generally admitted, we can dimly foresee that there will be a considerable revolution in natural history. So he said, this is a big deal. This is going to change how we understand sort of life, the grand patterns of life. This will give an overarching general law to explain biological patterns that before that we were unable to sort of explain scientifically. But what comes next is also as interesting, systematists. And so these are people who would describe and classify species, so put species, genus, family, assign species within the kind of taxonomic hierarchy, describe them, give them names. Systematists will be able to pursue their labors as at present, but they will not be incessantly haunted by the shadowy doubt whether this or that form be in essence a species. And so you say, okay, there might be a big revolution, but guys, the way that we're already doing science, we'll keep doing science the way that we always doing science. We'll just be able to do it with a better explanation. So that's the point that he made. He was optimistic. He writes to his best friend, Joseph Hooker, right before The Origin comes out, we shall soon be a good body of working men. I emphasize working, people who are original researchers. And shall have, I am convinced, all the young and rising naturalists on our side. So Darwin was optimistic. For a range of reasons, his optimism, at least initially, was misplaced. A huge amount of abuse just rained down on his poor head, including from people that he once considered to be colleagues and friends. An incredibly nasty review came from Richard Owen, who at the time, probably even more so than Darwin, would have been recognized as Britain's greatest living biologist. And he savages Darwin's theory. He doesn't just say it's wrong, but he sneers that Darwin was not among those naturalists who trouble the intellectual world little with their beliefs, but enrich it greatly with their proofs. Basically what he's saying is that Darwin is clogging up science with these vague speculations, instead of going out and doing real research the way that real scientists do, and the way that Darwin once did before he went off on this tangent, that Darwin is just out there. It's lazy speculation. This is nasty. This broke up their friendship, and they never spoke after this review. Owen also coached one of the most kind of prominent clergymen of the era, the Bishop of Oxford, Samuel Wilberforce, Soapy Sam. he was commonly known. And he writes also an excoriating review. These are in like major periodicals. These are not reviews that are in like out of the way. These are in the Edinburgh Review, the Quarterly Review, the most important sort of intellectual journals of the age. And Wilberforce also sneers that Darwin abandoned the sober, patient, philosophical courage of our home philosophy, that Mr. Darwin should have wandered from the broad highways of nature's work into the jungle of fanciful assumption is no small evil. So he says he's a bad scientist, he's not even really very English. So that's a little bit of insult going on there. And Darwin actually was pretty disheartened because for a lot of reasons that this criticism really kind of stuck. And he wrote to Hooker, his great confidant, 1863. He said, the origin of species has been out for several years. And he says, well, I do not believe there are above half a dozen real downright believers in evolution in all England. Certainly not more who dare speak out. Now, when he wrote this, although Darwin, I don't think it was clearly not aware of it, the tide was already starting to turn. One of the things that turns the tide is the book that he writes after The Origin of Species. And it's a book that, I mean, if you really want to take The Origin of Species to the beach, you can. You know, you can. It's the type of thing that you can read on the beach. I mean, okay, it may not be a Grisham novel, but, you know, it's accessible, it's interesting to the lay reader. The next book, if you can find a copy, do not take it to the beach. On the various contrivances by which British and foreign orchids are fertilized by insects and the good effects of intercrossing. I mean, I'm getting worn out just reading the title. And so what Darwin does in this book is he deals with the major problem of the reproduction of